Imagine becoming the most powerful man in the world, and just 82 days later, being forced to make the deadliest military decision in human history. April 12, 1945, Franklin Delano Roosevelt is dead. The nation is in shock, and in a quiet corner of the Capitol, a man from Missouri is being told his life, and the world, has just changed forever. He wasn't prepared. He wasn't briefed. He was the president nobody expected. History didn't wait for Harry Truman to be ready. Harry Truman was never supposed to be here. He was a farmer from Independence, Missouri, a man who knew the soil better than the halls of power. He served in the Great War, leading men through the mud of France. He ran a haberdashery that failed. He was a man of the people, plain-spoken and direct. His rise in politics was steady, but he was always the outsider. When Roosevelt picked him as vice president in 1944, it was a compromise, a safe choice. But in the 82 days he served as VP, Truman was kept in the dark. He wasn't invited to the inner circle. He didn't know about the secret weapon being built in the desert. He was a heartbeat away from the presidency, and he had no idea what was coming.
In July 1945, the Missouri farmer found himself at a table in Potsdam, sitting between the giants of the age, Churchill and Stalin. He was the new man, the unknown quantity, but he carried a secret that would change the geometry of power forever. In the New Mexico desert, a son had been born at midnight. Truman was told the babies were satisfactorily born. The decision that followed was his alone. No advisors, no predecessors, just a man, a desk, and a choice that would end a world war and haunt the next century. When the Enola Gay took flight, the world held its breath. And when the crowds finally roared on VJ Day, Harry Truman stood on the balcony, knowing the peace he had won was as heavy as the war he had ended. The war was over, but for Harry Truman, the peace was just as demanding. He returned to a desk that now held the weight of a new world order. On that desk sat a small sign, "The buck stops here." It wasn't just a slogan, it was his philosophy. From the Marshall Plan to the dawn of the Cold War, Truman didn't flinch. He was the plain-spoken man from Missouri who proved that leadership isn't about where you start, but where you stand when the world is watching. Harry Truman didn't seek the spotlight, but he never stepped out of it until the job was done.
By 1948, the pundits had already packed Truman's bags. The polls said he was finished. But Harry wasn't done. He boarded the Ferdinand Magellan and took his case to the people. 31,000 miles of track. By 1948, speeches, the pundits had already packed Truman's bags. Give him hell, Harry. The polls said he was finished. He didn't give them hell. He just told the truth. And they thought it was hell. It was the greatest underdog story in American
Standing
history.
on the back of a train,
a man who refused to be counted out,
standing on the back of a train,
Harry Truman, fighting for the soul of the country he had been thrust into leading. But the victory at home was only half the battle. Across the Atlantic, Europe lay in ruins, a fertile ground for the creeping shadow of communism. Truman knew that hunger and despair were the enemies of peace. He signed the Marshall Plan, pouring billions into the reconstruction of a continent. And when Stalin choked off Berlin, Harry didn't blink. He launched the airlift, a bridge of silver wings that kept a city alive and drew a line in the sand that would define the next half-century. It was the birth of containment, the start of the Cold War, and the moment America truly stepped onto the world stage as a superpower.
But the peace Truman fought so hard to build was fragile.
In
June 1950, the world held its breath as North Korean tanks rolled across the 38th parallel. As North Korean tanks rolled across the 38th
He bypassed
parallel.
Congress,
Calling it
didn't
a
hesitate.
police action.
He bypassed
and committed
Congress,
American troops to a brutal, frozen conflict,
a general's
the limits of
defiant
containment. It was a war of hills and ridges,
burdened
of
choice,
MacArthur's defiance, and
a
Truman's
frozen
ultimate
world
resolve
waiting
to keep the conflict from spiraling into a Third World War. It was the forgotten
in
war,
January 1953,
but for Harry, it was the
Harry
final,
Truman did something
grueling
few
test of
powerful
his
men
presidency.
ever did. In January 1953,
He simply went home.
Harry Truman did
Just a
something
private
few
citizen
powerful
taking
men
the train
ever
back
do.
to Independence,
He simply
Missouri.
went home.
He spent his final
Secret
years
Service
walking the
detail,
streets of his
no
hometown,
pension,
building
just a
his
private
library,
citizen taking
and
the
watching
train
the
back
world
to
he helped
Independence,
shape.
Missouri.
He wasn't a
spent
man
his
of destiny,
final years
but a man
walking
of
the
duty.
streets of his hometown.
And in the end,
building his library,
the president nobody
and watching
prepared
the world
became
he
the
helped
leader
shape
the world
moved into a
couldn't
new
forget.
age. He wasn't a man of destiny. but a man of duty. And in the end, the president nobody prepared became the leader the world couldn't forget.